I love cornbread dressing. Whether it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, or any other time of the year, I could eat it year-round because I think it's the ultimate comfort food. And the recipe that I'm sharing with you today is the easiest that I know of. It's so moist, it's so golden brown and delicious, you're absolutely gonna love it. So let's start cooking. So I'm going to introduce our very simple ingredients today. We have our dry ingredients, which would be our seasonings, our poultry seasoning, sage, and everything else is pretty much a wet ingredient. Then we have our leftover cornbread. If you haven't seen a video on cornbread, watch my video on how to make Southern style cast iron skillet cornbread. And this is day old. It's actually been in the freezer, but I set it out for a day just to dry it out a little bit more. We're going to have 3 eggs, 2 cups of celery, 2 cups of onion, 1 can of cream of chicken soup, 1 can of cream of celery soup, and about 6 cups of chicken broth. And that's basically what we're going to use to make our great Southern cornbread dressing today. So the first important step is we're going to sweat our onions and our celery. So I'm going to put this on medium heat, put a little bit of butter in here, and we're going to saute this down. We're really going to sweat it. And we don't want to get it too hot because we do not want to brown our mirepoix. We just want to get it clear and opaque and tender. We'll dump that in there, throw that in there. I always like to put my dry seasoning in when I do my mirepoix. I'll put my sage in, my poultry seasoning, and then I'll do a flavor test, taste test, just to see if it's according to the way that I really want it. I can always adjust my seasonings at that time, salt, pepper, or whatever. So we're going to put that on medium heat. I'm going to cover that with a lid, and we're just going to let that do its thing for a few minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. We'll check it, and then we'll come back and season it, and then it's going to be ready to go into our dressing mix. I think our mirepoix is nice and tender. I've tasted it. It tastes good, the good balance of flavor there, so I'm not going to add anything else to it. I'm going to set this aside now. I'll leave a lid on it just so it'll continue to cook a little bit more there. Now we're going to mix together all of our wet ingredients. I'm going to put 3 eggs in my bowl. Blend those a little bit. Then I'm going to take my cream of chicken soup, pour right in there. I'm going to mix all that together. Now I'm going to add my 12 cups of cornbread. We're going to mix all that in. And this is really important, this next step about the chicken broth that we're going to use. We're going to need about 6 cups total. Now this is going to be a little soupy, and we want it soupy because it's going to cook out. And if you don't put enough broth in it, you're going to have very dry cornbread dressing. So I'm going to let this sit just a little while and let it absorb in case I think I need to add a little bit more broth to it. If you want to know how your cornbread dressing's tasting before you actually cook it, and then it'll be too late to make adjustments, go ahead and take some of it out, throw it in a skillet, fry it up. You can taste it that way, or stick just a little bit of it in the oven on a sheet pan and cook it for 5 or 10 minutes until it's done, and then taste it. Then if you think you need more sage or more poultry seasoning, you can come back and do that at that time. But once you put it in there and cook it, it's going to be too late. So everything's mixed together. We let this absorb for about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to come over here and add my mirepoix. It's nice and tender. Stayed in there and steamed a little bit longer. It's looking really nice, and you see it's runny. It's not soaking wet, but we want it to be very moist like this because all that's going to cook out. So I have my baking dish over here. Take some butter, some softened butter, and we're just going to wipe it around the entire dish real good. You can use spray. I like to use the butter. Gives it just a little more flavor. I'm going to put this in the oven 375 degrees, about 25 or 30 minutes. We're going to check it. We're going to check it for firmness and see how moist it still is. And then we may have to cook it a few minutes longer. So someone says, well, how long do you cook it? Well, it may depend on the depth of your dish, the oven, the way your oven cooks. A lot of different factors, so we just need to monitor it after about 25 minutes. So see you in just a second. This just came out of the oven, 375 degrees, and it actually took about 35 minutes because that's an extra thick loaf of cornbread dressing there, but it's perfectly golden brown, and you can tell by looking at it how moist it is. It's really going to be delicious. If you learned anything today on this channel, please like us, subscribe to the channel, tell all your friends about it, but remember above everything, not only love to cook, but cook to love.